All right, everybody. Today we're going to be going over different early species of rhinos as well as early relatives of today's antelopes, elephants, saber-toothed cats, and as well early relatives of today's canids. And as well, we're going to be going over some saber-toothed marsupials. We're also streaming on Kick, YouTube, and Rumble. So, from Sci News.
I put us on X too.
Oh, and as well X. And this is Creature Guy Live Daily News. So from Sci News, we did mention this in a one of our major news live streams previously, but we didn't go very far into depth. And this is a pretty new discovery. Rhinos lived in high Arctic 23 million years ago. So this is during the beginning of the Miocene epoch, just after the Oligocene ended, around 24 to 25 million years ago. So paleontologists have identified a new early Miocene species of the rhinocerid genus Epiacerotherium from the fossilized remains found in the Canadian high Arctic. Yeah, that's a really good picture. And there were also a wide variety of different species of otters during the Miocene, Pliocene, and Pleistocene epochs as well. Some reaching well over 220 pounds, or a little over 100 kilograms. And they would have preyed on, or it seems like they might have preyed on different species of early antelope, deer, possibly even young elephants, as well as feeding on different species of fish and crustaceans. This is also the point in time, in fact, for much of the rhino's evolution, they did not score horns. And in many cases, they just had just a wide open muzzle. And when it came to certain species, especially during the Miocene into the Pliocene epoch, they might have scored bottom jaw tusks, but not really much of a horn, not even a major bump on over on their muzzle as well. Let's see. So the new rhino species lived in what is now Canada about 23 million years ago, named Epiacerotherium italic. It is most closely related to other rhino species that thrived in Europe millions of years earlier. Well, there have been a wide variety of different species of rhinos that have existed since the Eocene epoch. So we're referring to over 57 different species of rhinos that have existed since about 45 million years ago. So that's about the mid Eocene epoch. So here, let's take a look at somebody else. So this was a bit earlier in time over in Asia. This is Ronzotherium, which is a close relative of the other large species of rhinos that existed in Asia during the late Oligocene epoch. So this is about 26 to 27 million years ago. Different parts of the Middle East, like Iran, Pakistan, as well as over in East Asia, like Mongolia and China, there have been a wide variety of different species of large rhinos reaching over eight. Well, I'd say to be safe, around 4 tons. And this individual, though, is one of the smaller species. It weighs somewhere about 2,000 pounds or a little over 900 kilograms, basically weighing about a ton. And this animal was likely feeding on different species of shrubs, possibly grasses in the area that it inhabited. This is also around the time that species of grasses closely related to today's grasses started evolving. And with that, you had many species of animals that ended up going extinct due to the fact, especially specifically pointing to different species of herbivores and omnivores. They simply didn't have teeth that were adapted to these new um, I guess extremely hard to chew and low nutritional value plants. And in order to combat that, you needed specific teeth that were designed for grinding this tough vegetation. Something like the mammoths would very much specialize in later on into the Pleistocene epoch or the Ice Age. But Ronzotherium, in fact, many of the rhinos in general would have been able to adapt to this. There are certain species of rhinos today that don't really feed on much grass. You have it where over in Asia, like the Sumatran rhino or the Javan rhino. In fact, let's pull up a Sumatran rhino, which is the smallest species. So yeah, Sumatra, and then rhino is okay. Just sometimes people forget the RH.
I usually do.
Let's see. So what's another thing? Oh, yeah. The greater one horn rhino over in India does feed on a wide range of different species of grasses, but different to what the white rhino and the black rhino feed on over in Africa. And also, the black rhino tends to feed on mostly different species of shrubs. So I believe this is a Sumatra rhino. This seems like a bit of an older picture, but it seems like one that just came out of a mud wallow. Now, what is interesting is that the Sumatran rhino is the closest relative to the extinct woolly rhinos that inhabited different parts of Asia and Europe, possibly even Alaska and the Yukon during the Ice Age. And there were actually the certain captive individuals that were over previously in the Cincinnati Zoo over in Ohio because of the cooler winters in Ohio and Indonesia and Sumatra, where the Sumatra rhino is native to. It's simply a tropical climate. They do score small bits of fur, almost like maybe a Colombian mammoth would score fur, or certain species of earlier rhinos as well that did inhabit cold regions of the Pleistocene epoch or the Ice Age. But the specific individuals that were coming in over from the Cincinnati Zoo were extremely furry. I mean, they had almost like a semi woolly rhino occurring there, and they are close relatives. The white rhino, the black rhinos over in Africa are very distantly related to the extinct Ice Age rhinos. But all are members of the major family of mammals called rhinosauroid. Yeah, rhino, Rhinoceros um, and as well, what was I getting at? Here, let's just, go on to another animal. But, these specific rhinos tend to feed on a wide variety of different leafy material. They also will access different mineral, clay sites. So today there are only 5 species of rhinos in Africa and Asia, but in the past they were found in Europe and North America. Um, well, I think what it means is including Europe and North America as well, because they did thrive also in Asia and Africa. They did evolve over in North America, though, with more than 50 species known from the fossil record. So Dr. Danielle Fraser, a researcher at the Canadian Museum of Nature, Carleton University, and the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History. I was going to guess it was a radio host. The addition of this Arctic species to the rhino family tree now offers new insights to our understanding of their evolutionary history. Um, see. Oh, it was in Canada. Okay. I was confused for a second because I don't think it was this specific individual. Okay, this is a completely different article. I mixed it up with what was it? I think hippos over in Germany. And, like, during the late Pleistocene epochs, around 40,000 years ago, during the last 30,000 years of the Ice Age, and I swear they used a very almost like the same picture, except this is a rhino, not a hippo. There have been many fewer species of hippo that have been discovered. So, also taking a look at another animal. Also, this is the jawbone of the Ronzotherium. Now, looking at this jaw structure, this is not something that is suited for um, eating much grass. I mean, possibly it could have fed on slight bits, but this is almost like a mastodon sort of a tooth structure. So something like this Chlorophodon, which existed during the Miocene epoch, somewhere between 9 to 15 million years ago, over in different parts of Africa. as well as the Middle East and different parts of Pakistan, China, and I believe this species of elephant, or proboscidean, if you want a more basic term, um, existed over in Greece.
What do you mean a more basic term?
Well, proboscideans basically contain every single member of the elephant family. Whereas if you're talking about different specific families like the mammoths, mastodons, and gomphotheres, the comphotheres, there are several different lineages. They only contain a small amount of species. There aren't as many mammoths as many people think that there are, or many people tend to assume it's just mammoths. And the truth is that you have a wide variety of different types of structured elephant species or proboscidean species. Basically, the proboscideans are the elephant family. So,
I've never even heard of that.
yeah, it's basically they also go back somewhere around 40 to 47 million years, evolving in Africa, though. So, this chlorophodon is also not as large as it seems. Many people also tend to view the early evolution of elephants as always being massive behemoths weighing over 6 tons. And the truth is, this individual was probably only around maybe 150 to 200 pounds or a little over 100 kilograms.
So basically, he was a baby elephant.
Practically, but heavily armed for his size, and he needed to be considering the different types of predators in the area that he coexisted with. This is a bit better, and as you can see, they have that shovel-like tusk structure, or at least bottom jaw, which is somewhat similar to the gomphotheres, but this is a distinct lineage.
It looks like he
Um,
has a spear at the end.
you talk right here with the mini tusks,
Yep.
which are teeth. So are the tusks up here. These individuals, along with members of the Gomphothere family, did score tusks that would be shaped in different positions. So these Gomphotheres tend to have more upright tusks, somewhat similar to today's African elephants. I mean, you could say Asian elephants will also have somewhat curved upward tusks, but it tends to be, at least with certain mature bulls, I guess it depends on the population. The true tuskers tend to have tusks that would point straight to the ground. This can also be the same for certain major tuskers over in East Africa, especially over in Kenya with those large bush elephants. And then you have other populations which, for some reason, tend to be much shorter and point slightly upwards. The Gomphotheres, on the other hand, not this guy. Just referring to the Gomphotheres, they tend to point straight to the ground, which is quite odd. And in many cases, these don't seem to be even very long tusks. They just simply seem to be straight, aligned with the jaw structure. And the same would go for their bottom jaw to an extent, being more in a diagonal position. Also, it seems that many of these species of elephants probably didn't have very large ears compared to bush elephants and African forest elephants today, much more similar to Asian elephants. It is interesting considering Asian elephants also don't necessarily live in a cool climate, yet they have very small ears. This is back to the Ronzotherium. They seem to be giving, though, this individual a bit of a horn structure, which is certainly possible in certain older species of rhinos. Considering the problem is when it comes to rhinos in general, is that their horn is made out of keratin, which is the same substance that our fingernails and hair are made out of. So they can regrow their horn if part of it gets chopped off. Um, So, let's see. I mean, you could also have that occur possibly in a fight with later species of rhinos. Now, okay. Let's go back to the article. So let's see. Where were we? So Epioceratherium italic was relatively small and slight, similar in size to the modern Indian rhinoceros, but lacking a horn. The animal's fossilized remains were recovered from the fossil-rich lake deposits in Hutton Crater on Devon Island, Nunavut. Whoa. Okay, so it wasn't hitting when it came to the Arctic. The Nunavut is a part of basically the most northeastern region of Canada. Um, this basically consists of most of the northern Canadian Arctic islands and geographically also contains Greenland. So, um, let's see, where else was I getting with that? It's just quite interesting. You don't hear many animals coming from the Nunavut areas. I think occasionally there might have been a woolly mammoth. It's also an area where there are plenty of polar bears, but a rhino, that's definitely a new one. Now, this is definitely not a small species. I mean, Indian rhinoceros or greater one horned rhinos today can reach over 4 tons. So, um, for this part of the earth, I mean, you're having to consume quite a bit of vegetation. This is also before, though, the Arctic tundra would occur. And the Arctic tundra is a very moist and just overall wet and mossy area, and also lots of lichen species. So it's not, these are not practical plants for the different species of herbivores that would have inhabited the mammoth steppe. However, the mammoth steppe occurred much later in time, not really appearing until about 2.5 million years ago at the beginning of the Ice Age. We're over, um, what, pushing 18 to 20 million years beforehand? So it definitely would be a much different ecosystem. I don't know what the Arctic would have consisted of back then. It was definitely much warmer than it is today. So what's remarkable about the Arctic rhino is that the fossil bones are in excellent condition. Dr. Marissa Gilbert, also from the Canadian Museum of Nature. They are three-dimensionally preserved and have only been partially replaced by minerals. About 75% of the skeleton was discovered, which is incredibly complete for a fossil. The authors placed Epiacerotherum idyllic in the rhino family tree by studying the occurrence of 57 other species of rhinocerodids, almost all extinct. Okay, because they were, of course, going to include today's five. So the results came from visiting museum collections, combing through the scientific literature, and using databases. The researchers were also able to place each rhinoceros geographically in one of five continental regions. So it was an exhaustive process. Each species was scored based on where they were found, using a mathematical modeling approach to determine rates of dispersal among those different continents within the family Rhinocerodidae. So this is in Rhinocerodi is a family that's within the Rhinoceroideae lineage of mammals. They are also members of the Parasodactyl lineage of mammals as well. So this would include animals such as rhinos, camels, and not wait a second, not camels. Um horses and tapirs. Which also they're also known as the odd-toed mammals. Basically, they only have one toe or they have three toes.
Ooh.
So rhinos and tapirs have three toes, and the horse has one toe. Well, horses didn't used to. If you go back to the Eocene epoch or even the Paleocene over 56 million years ago, horses had over four toes. And then eventually they would become today's one-toed horse. Hitting that one toe somewhere in the late Pliocene or early Pleistocene epoch, so somewhere between 2 to 3 million years ago. So here we have a species of camel that used to inhabit South Dakota, Wyoming. It's been found in the White River Fossil Formation. This is Protolitis, which was probably somewhere around 3 feet tall or around a meter. So it was a
Wait,
very,
at its back or its head?
I believe its head. So this individual was probably weighing not much more than 50 to 60 pounds or a little over 25 kilograms. And probably just fed on some of the earliest species of grasses to have evolved. And this was also during the Oligocene, somewhere around 28 to 30 million years ago. Now, camels had also evolved much earlier in time over in North America. Somewhere around 45 to 50 million years ago is when some of the first camels had evolved, and they were smaller than certain species of cats even today. breeds of cats. Um, I don't know, maybe species of cats would probably be better. So, probably about the size of maybe a large fishing cat over in Asia. Okay, so let's see. So is the team's analysis offers new insights into how rhinos dispersed over millions of years between North America and Europe via Greenland using the North Atlantic land bridge. Previous studies suggested this land bridge may have only have functioned as a dispersal corridor until around 56 million years ago. But the new analysis with Epiacerotherium italic and its related species suggests that dispersals occurred from Europe to North America much more recently, potentially as late as the Miocene. Um, whoa, wait a second. Um, trying to think of specifically the climate and how this would have occurred. Hmm, I'll have to look into that. But there is more that comes from the identification of Epiacerotherium italic, as our reconstructions of rhino evolution show that the North Atlantic played a much more important role in their evolution than previously thought. More broadly, this study reinforces that the Arctic continues to offer up new knowledge and discoveries that expand on our understanding of mammal diversification over time. Still, at least what's been stated here hasn't answered too many questions. But this rhino showing up in the Nunavut, Canadian Arctic Islands, and over 22 million years ago in the Miocene is definitely it's putting, if anything, a big question mark on rhino evolution. I wouldn't say a lot of things have been answered. It's more of like, how did this happen? We are going to go to another article, but I want to mention this animal real quick. Despite its appearance, this is not a close relative of the modern day hippo, nor is it close relative of the elephants. This is actually a bit of a closer relative to the rhino family as well. This is Metimnodon, which is a member of a distinct lineage of Parasidactyls. Or wait a second, is it already? No, I believe. I got that mixed up. So these are artiodactyls. They're just a bit more closely related to the rhinos. So, um, this specific animal was probably somewhere around, I believe, 800 to 1,000 pounds, or a little over 400 kilograms. It was probably feeding on not you. Okay. You have different species of wetland plants, probably even coming up occasionally feeding on different species of shrubs during the early Miocene, so over 20 million years ago. And this individual, it's a bit of a mystery when it comes to its overall like distribution in different parts of Asia. It does look like it inhabited different parts of Africa during the Miocene. So let's head over to next article. So, Thylacis smilis was not a saber-toothed predator. Thylacis smilis atrox, an extinct marsupial that roamed South America between 9 and 3 million years ago, was not the ecological analog of saber-toothed cats, and likely did not use its impressive canines to dispatch its prey, according to new research led by University of Bristol scientists. Okay. So this is a slightly older article. I've heard of these types of theories with saber-toothed cats and attempts to be aimed at more later predators, also placentals such as Smilodon, Barbophelus. Well, Barbophelus is actually placed with um, the same lineage of marsupials that Thylacis smilis belongs to. But who is it? The different species, Smilodon, possibly even Homotherium over in Asia. Uh, It's really hard to agree with considering why else would you develop such long canines? You have a very weak bite force. You can't necessarily shake your mouth from side to side, or else you risk breaking the canine, especially if you're already holding on to something with your teeth. They're very sharp. Thylacophilus atrox, also known as the marsupial sabertooth, is often presented as a classic case of convergent evolution.
And for people that don't realize when you're saying marsupial, what are you relating to?
So this animal is very closely related to different species of kangaroos, wallabies, the Tasmanian devil, the extinct thylacine or Tasmanian tiger,
Well, does a
and
Tasmanian devil have canines?
um, not to the same extent as this specific animal, but yeah, I believe somewhat, just much smaller compared to its body size. Very similar to the quolls that exist over in Australia that feed on smaller species of marsupials, but they also have a vast insectivorous diet, so feeding on a wide variety of insects. It's also related to the koala. Trying to think if I'm missing any more
Which is
well.
a humorous relation to this animal.
Um, well, yeah, it's kind of like the hyenodonts during the Oligocene epoch, that are somewhat related to today's pangolins. So, I guess what's another thing? I think there was a certain rhino-like animal. It had extremely large two horns compared to its body size on its snout. Um, it's called Arsinoitherium. It's lived in the Eocene over in northern Africa about 38 million years ago. But it's actually a close relative of the elephant. So let's take a look. So, where animals appear similar in form despite having very different evolutionary relationships, the ancient creature had huge, ever growing canines, leading paleontologists to speculate that it was an even more vicious predator than the placental saber-tooth, such as the North American species Smilodon fatalis. That's interesting considering I kind of have to disagree with that. I mean, we'll see what they're going to mention, but um, Thylacis smilis, it ranges from about 90 pounds or a little over 20 kilograms to maybe reaching as much as 300 pounds with different size estimates, or a little over 130 kilograms. So, okay. The jaguar size Thylacis smilis atrox is around half the size, average body mass 117 kilograms of Smilodon fatalis, which was lion sized or larger at 245 kilograms. Smilodon fatalis specifically, so this is the American saber-toothed cat, or at least that tends to associate with the central United States as well as the western United States. So over in different parts of Texas, Kansas, Colorado, California, could reach somewhere around 600 pounds or a little over 285 kilograms. But was it really a fierce predator like the extinct saber-toothed cats, which seem to have been much like modern cats, but with a different mode of killing their prey? Saber-toothed cats are related to today's modern day house cats, lions, tigers, cougars. They are just simply members of the Machaerodontidae lineage of Felidae. So these are all members of Felidae except for the Thylacis smilis, considering he is a marsupial. And Felidae is a branch of the placental lineage of mammals, which also consists of the different species of elephants, the rhinos, bears, wolves, deer. But was it already said it. Okay. So, Lacosmilus atrox has impressive canines for sure, but if you look at the whole picture of its anatomy, lots of things simply don't add up, said University of Bristol's Professor Christine Janis, first author of the study. For example, it just about lacks incisors, which big cats today use to get meat off the bone, and its lower jaws were not fused together. In addition, the canines of Thylacospilus atrox were different from the teeth of other saber-toothed mammals, being triangular in shape like a claw rather than flat like a blade. Really? Triangular? That is. I'm trying to think of that. I'm going to go back up to the picture. What are they meaning by a triangle? I mean, you could say somewhat when looking at the canines.
Doesn't look like a triangle to me.
No, this is I like smiles. This is over here.
Neither one of them look like a triangle.
That's supposed to be Smilodon? Yeah, I think so. That is a weird looking face. He almost looks like a weasel to an extent. Anyway, um,
Well, remember
okay. You could say that Thylacospilus, at least by this image, the blades look a bit thinner and maybe sharper compared to the Smilodons. Smilodons look a little more blunt. Not that they wouldn't be sharp. It is also interesting with the Thylacosmilids, considering they had an immense chin structure, whereas the Smilodons, they tend to be known as the chinless saber-tooths, despite technically have a chin, but not to the extent of certain other types of saber-tooth predators. And then if you go back very far in time to around 253 million years ago, at the end of the Permian period, in different parts of North America, Europe, Asia, and you had Africa, different species of proto mammals, such as the Gorgonopsians. They also scored canines, but they didn't have necessarily very large chins, at least not to the extent of the Thylacosmilids. They are quite distantly related to mammals in, well, okay, you could say today's mammals and over in the late Miocene and mid Pleistocene epoch, but they are pretty closely related to the family tree. Okay, so here, let's take a look at another animal. So this right here is also a very early species of bear. This is Ursavis.
Floppy Rabbit said, "What would it have cost to get their teeth cleaned on Keck?"
Um, I mean, I guess if it's a very stable animal, it does very well with hominids or primates in general. Um, hmm. Well, the question is, I'm guessing that the insurance probably does cover it, so maybe around 12,000. So, um, no, I'm kidding. Probably around 4,000. So, who do we have here? This is Heteroprox, which is a early species of deer from around, let's say, actually about 5 to 9 million years ago. So, from about the early Pliocene to the late Miocene epoch. And this is also deer actually go quite far back during the Cenozoic era. Many tend to associate deer with being very recent arrivals. And the truth is, they have been around since somewhere around 23 to 27 million years ago, so possibly over into the late Oligocene epoch. Though this animal was quite small, not reaching anywhere to the extent of many species of deer today. Probably not much larger in many cases than different species of, well, I was about to say musk deer, but musk deer aren't true deer. What would be a good comparison? There are certain species of deer over in South America that don't usually reach much more than 75 pounds. In some cases, much less, like barely reaching 20 to 30 pounds in some cases, with like new species of deer that have been discovered, or ranging from basically about 8 kilograms to maybe as much as 30 kilograms. And yes, they were herbivores and probably also feeding on different species of leaves at the time as well. It varies on the deer species, but some are not. In fact, many do not feed on grass. Grass really only occurs with a few species of deer, at least being a part of their diet. This is an early species of saber-toothed cat as well, but it is an odd one. This is Metellurus, which existed during the Miocene somewhere around 11 million years ago. And this animal had almost like I guess you could say a serval from Africa. So but serval is a very, especially it's basically the large-eared spotted cat of Africa that very much is into jumping. But I know you could say, well, most cats are, but the serval tends to prey on a wide
Did you say
variety of,
jumping?
yeah, tends to prey on a wide variety of different species of rodents as well as different species of small birds. But it's not much more than like 25 to 35 pounds or a little over 10 to 15 kilograms. This individual was a bit larger, but it was more of like a very sleek or just very long-legged compared to its body size, but it was also muscular. There are different depictions of this animal, almost having like a bobcat, serval, and what would be a good
Cougar?
mix with it? Possibly a cougar, but it has a bit more musculature to it than at least on the neck. Now, maybe if you're looking at certain male cougar individuals, it's very possible, especially looking at the rest of its overall morphology. Its paws, though, at least for how they're drawn in this depiction, don't seem to have as much of a cougar look. But we're also talking about several million years before the first cougars appeared. So this,
Unless you got a degree in biology and think that cougars appeared at the beginning of mammals.
um, yeah, certain people have mentioned that cougars have been around for millions of years. So this is specifically Hyracodon, which is not a species of horse despite its appearance. This is actually one of the first species of rhinos to evolve. This was over 40 million years ago, back in the Eocene epoch, and it was an herbivore as well. Now, technically, if you look at it, it's not exactly a member of Rhinoceros, but it is a close relative. And these individuals were probably not much larger than 30 to 40 pounds or a little over 15 kilograms. Yeah, most likely just feeding on different species of probably shrubs or leafy plants. These animals are probably not grazing very much. Now, there were technically different species of grasses that had evolved, but not to the same type of texture or just overall variety that you would see when the Oligocene would appear. So, somewhere around 30 million years ago is when grasses exploded around the earth. So this is a very good reconstruction of a Hyracodon. I believe being pursued possibly by an early species of hyenodont, but seems to be some sort of maybe cat. Hyenodonts were grapplers as well, depending on the species. Okay, so heading back to this Thylacolsmilus issue. In the study, Professor Janis and colleagues compared aspects of the skull and teeth of Thylacolsmilus atrox with both present-day big cats and a diversity of extinct saber-toothed cats. The skull superficially looks rather like that of a saber-toothed placental, but if you actually quantify things, it becomes clear that Thylacolsmilus's atrox's skull was different in many details from any known carnivorous mammal, past or present, said co-author Dr. Borja Figueredo, a researcher at the University of Malaga. Previous studies by other researchers have shown Thylacolsmilus atrox to have had a weaker bite than Smilodon fatalis. Well, I would assume that this animal could weigh as little as 90 pounds or a little over 40 kilograms. So, said University of Birmingham's Dr. Stephen Laudenschlager, senior author of the study. But what we can show is there was probably a difference in behavior between the two species. Now, like a Smilus atrox's skull and canines are weaker in a stabbing action than those of Smilodon
Wait
fatalis.
a minute. One's a marsupial and one's a cat.
Um, the Tasmanian devil technically has the largest bite force of any mammal compared to its body size.
Oh,
It's not a very large bite force, but it does have the strongest compared to its body size, at least of today's mammals. Now, when it comes to metabolism, then you could say placentals like the shrews will take over. They have the fastest metabolism. So that is very interesting. And the reason why it is because you have it where um, smaller animals like the pygmy possum or the honey possum, which weighs, gosh, what is it? Somewhere around 0.8 ounces, maybe 1 to 2 grams. No, that would be, I think, one. I'm not somewhere in that ratio. But I don't believe it has as fast of a metabolism. It also mainly feeds on nectar. So let's see. Whereas the shrews are feeding on different species of aquatic crustaceans or different species of worms. But what we can show is there was probably a difference in behavior between the two species. Oh wait, I already said that. Okay. So the stabbing action is weaker in Thylacolus atrox's skull compared to Smilodon fatalis, but are stronger in a pullback type of action. Interesting.
1 ounce equals 28 grams, 28.3495.
Wait, 1 ounce equals
28.3495 grams.
okay, yeah. So it's okay. Then I'm probably very far off. This animal, I'll have to double check that. It literally hangs out on or attaches to flowers and just feeds on the nectar when talking about the honey possum's feeding behavior. This suggests that Thylacosmilus atrox was not using its canines to kill with, but perhaps instead to open carcasses. Oh no, here we go again with this theory. This has been pushed with a wide variety of different carnivorous animals. Like they didn't even hunt, they just scavenged. Great. Another Tyrannosaur issue. I think this has also been theorized with other branches of like carnivorous dinosaurs, like probably different large species of carcharodontosaurs, spinosaurs when it came to hunting specifically dinosaurs on land. Instead, like they would eat fish, but they would only scavenge. When we have evidence for them hunting different species of dinosaurs, pterosaurs, crocodilomorphs. So I believe it's, or at least my theory would be, is that this animal is very much capable of tackling larger prey items and using its canines to sever major organs, especially in the neck. Because this animal isn't exactly lightly built when you're looking at a skeleton of it. Since, I mean, when you look at these different depictions, these are very broad shoulders, well defined forelimbs, almost like today's big cats to an extent, despite these animals not being closely related. Now, the back
I thought
legs
these
are
weren't cats.
interesting. Yeah, I was just comparing them to
No, you
cats.
said like these big cats, and you showed the picture.
Oh, okay. Yeah, these aren't cats. Now, what is interesting is that the hind limbs are shorter than the forelimbs. Not to the same extent, however, as when looking at something like Smilodon fatalis or Smilodon populator, Smilodon florensis, and wait, I might have mixed up that last species. The Eastern American species. It's the smallest of the group, somewhere around 300 pounds or a little over 140 kilograms, basically jaguar size. But, um, the Smilodon species, the hind limbs are very short compared to the forelimbs, which is a problem when it comes to agility. It means that this animal probably couldn't run too quickly and was just meant for probably short bursts, but really, the way the benefit of the animal was simply, um, just having what, a lower center of gravity when tackling different species of like bison, the area that it occurred in, different species of camels, as well as possibly the younger members of different elephants that lived in the region. So Thylacolus was probably also hunting certain earlier species of probably even younger elephants as well. This is also another depiction. This looks pretty good. It's also a much more recent reconstructions where they're giving the saber tooth a gum line along the canines, which is really good to see considering you want it where there's also moisture occurring around the teeth when it comes to mammalian carnivores. Now, it also seems to be the case with even the dinosaurs as well, considering that's part of the benefit of these animals having lips, is that would help contain the moisture around their teeth, since it would be extremely, like, nearly fatal for the animal if it was completely dry, around their teeth. So for most animals, it's, very essential to have it where the teeth are covered. I'm trying to look for specifically, was there another individual? Oh, not sure if I mentioned these earlier, but these are, earlier species of pronghorn. There's actually been a wide variety of different species of pronghorn giraffeoids that have existed over in North America and even into Asia in some instances during the Miocene epoch and even into the later Pliocene and Pleistocene epoch. So pronghorn, they have been around for over at least 6 million years. And there have been many species that have more of a sort of pronghorn type of a body structure. In many cases, not exceeding much more than 120 pounds or a little over 55 kilograms. So, despite this animal looking pretty similar, it does have a different horn structure and also longer legs compared to its body size. And this is Osbornoceras. It's likely that they probably
What
were
is it?
Osbornoceras, which I believe is probably named after Henry Fairfield Osborn, which is a major paleontologist. So let's see. Also during the Miocene, there were some of the earlier species of canids as well. Though this animal belongs to a completely different family of canid than today's gray wolves. However, this is a Lurodon, which isn't necessarily too large of a canid. Like many people tend to think of the earlier canids as being much larger than today's gray wolves. There were certain species that were bigger, like Epicyon, but, this individual was close to the same size, probably not reaching much more than 130 pounds or a little over 60 kilograms. So here is simply the skull of the animal. It definitely was capable of chewing on bone to a major extent. It also just has a relatively much more robust and broader jaw structure, skull structure in general, than compared to today's gray wolves. This is almost like a hyena to an extent when really taking a close look at it, especially striped hyenas, spotted hyenas, and brown hyenas. So it is interesting. I do wonder if when somebody first found this, they somewhat mixed it up with crocuta species, which is basically the hyena. Many hyenas have the genus Crocuta in their name. So let's finish this off. Where were we? So finally, the other teeth of Thylacosmilus atrox also pose problems for the interpretation of this animal as a cat-like predator, whether saber-toothed or not. Besides the puzzling lack of incisors, the molars are small and did not wear down along the sides as seen in an animal feeding on meat. Hmm. The molars tend to wear flat from the top, rather like you see in a bone crusher. But if you examine the detailed microwear on tooth surfaces, it's clear that it was eating soft food. Its wear is not similar to that of cheetahs, which eat from fresh carcasses, and suggests an even softer diet than fed to captive lions. Co author Dr. Larissa DeSantis, researcher at Vanderbilt University.
Vanderbilt?
Um, I'm just going over like the so it seems like it's killing the animals. Let's say it's a hunter. Well, likely is. And only eating like the soft parts of the carcass and um, trying to avoid coming to contact with ligaments, bone especially, and probably maybe no, not tendons probably wouldn't be much of an issue. Um, just trying to think when it's eating its prey items and probably just avoiding any harder parts of the body, which isn't necessarily too surprising with this type of an animal. So, Thylacosmilus atrox was not a bone crusher, may have instead specialized on internal organs. It's a bit of a mystery as to what this animal was actually doing, but it's clear that it wasn't just a marsupial version of a saber-toothed cat like Smilodon fatalis. I think it somewhat was. I mean, obviously, it's going to have a different sort of lifestyle. It's not the same species. It's not even the same genus or family. It's a marsupial. So, in addition to the differences in the skull and the teeth, it was also short-legged and stiff-backed. and lacked retractable claws, so it would have had difficulties in pursuing its prey.
Wait, it lacked what?
I think it's supposed to be retractable.
I would assume so. I thought you just missaid it.
Pouncing on it and
Retractical. I don't know. Let's see if it's an actual word.
holding on to it.
Oh, it is actually retractical.
Oh, it's an actual word.
Yeah.
Like, is it English?
What the hell?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of English words today. They're just
What?
um,
What?
some are derived from Latin.
What ability of parts such as muscles, claws. Why is it showing this?
Hmm. Retractable testicle.
I don't know how that fit it in, but it says claws on it. Hmm.
Hmm. Okay. Well, that was interesting. So, um, I suspect it was some sort of specialized scavenger.
Wait. So does the animal have
Oh, come
retractable?
on! No. Usually, when it comes to predators and they're eating carcasses, like cheetahs are really a good example because they're always concerned about especially just larger predators in general coming over and taking their carcasses. Sometimes even vultures take over. Those are really embarrassing. But what is it? Not it's also it's not every time you have it where occasionally you have it where cheetahs are able to eat a lot of the carcass or at least have a full stomach. But besides that, um, it's not every day that a predator is going to be able to sniff out, a fresh carcass. Like, um, what's the guarantee that there's going to be enough meat to sustain them? Also, continuously. That's the problem with the whole scavenger theory. Vultures don't even naturally completely scavenge. Now you could say maybe what is it like a certain Egyptian vulture, the Griffin's vulture? They tend to mostly eat bone, and they will also what I think like also drop the bones from a very high height to get to the bone marrow. But, even for them, it's not completely their whole diet. So, and especially with mammals and as large as Thylacospilus, if you're weighing out even 90 pounds or a little over 40 kilograms, you need to eat consistently, and I'm guessing somewhere around, what, 3 to 4 pounds of meat at least each day? Or, like, about a couple of kilograms? So, that I just don't agree with this type of a theory. It just doesn't correlate with, um, fast metabolic mammals. It may have employed those canines to open carcasses and perhaps also used a big tongue to help extract the innards. I think I remember this, like, way back in some documentary. It wasn't with the Lagosmilus, I think it was actually with Smilodon itself. Other mammals that have lost the incisors, like walruses and anteaters, also have big tongues that they use in feeding. Are you really comparing one animal they eat specifically on ants and termites and another that feeds specifically on marine worms? No, that's horrible. You didn't even compare it with okay, earlier you were mentioning cheetahs, but there's also a wide variety of other cats. The problem is I think the clouded leopard is the closest when it comes to canine size compared to its body size because clouded leopards, which live over in Southeast Asia, like different parts of Thailand, Malaysia, Sumatra, they have the longest canines compared to their body size of any cat today. But they still feed on young wild boars, monkeys, the squirrels over in Southeast Asia. For those of you that don't know, there are squirrels in the jungle of Southeast Asia. Quite colorful too. But we have some colorful ones over in North America, Europe, red squirrels. But um, all of these cats are active hunters. I mean, practically every species of canid today. The bears. Who else? Trying to think of somebody that might scavenge a lot. Grizzly bears tend to scavenge somewhat, but they still also hunt quite a bit. This is, I just think, quite silly with also just comparing it with um, somewhat sluggish animals, also that have a completely different jaw structure. It's not even that they're distantly related because you can have very distantly related animals that have somewhat similar morphological mutations. But when comparing um, specifically, what are these animals? Seals, sea lions.
You don't know what a seal and a sea lion is?
No, it's just the that specific um, that specific family of marine mammals. Um, Just not hitting me at the moment, but
Wait, what are you trying to say?
I would say comparing it with a seal would be better than a walrus. But
What is a
even
seal?
then, it's a it starts with a P, but the family is not hitting me at the moment. So, I don't know what to say about this. I think we need to look more. I need to look more into Thylacus milis because this is just odd. So, wait. Also, was there anybody else thought of mentioning?
Oh, that was everybody.
Mm. Okay. Well, thanks for joining. And we're also streaming on YouTube, Kick, and Rumble. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guy Live Daily News. And remember, nothing is better than all animals, all